Hi, it's Brian Locker, and most of you will remember me from taproot training. Could be up to 10 years ago. For the last 8 months, I've been locked down here in Bahrain, but I haven't been idle. I finally had a chance to develop a program that's been in the back of my mind for about 40 years. I call it the Secret Code. I have put basically my life's experiences, starting from the time I was 9 years old on the farm, working as an overhead crane driver in my late teens, going to university, working 20 years for a company where we reduced the worker fatality rate by a factor of 10, and then 27 years after that company, the last 10 years being in the Gulf region. The Secret Code is the name of the program I've developed, and in the next few minutes, I would like you to take a glimpse, take a peek inside the covers of the Secret Code, and I'll be back with you when you do that. Enjoy it.
I told you this story the other day or last week. We all moved from quadrant 1 to quadrant 4. I assume you guys are probably in quadrant 4 when it comes to driving. You know, we can all relate to driving. But I remember my daughter, I taught my daughter to drive, and we lived in hilly territory. So she didn't have a clue, and I taught her on a manual transmission car. That was even more difficult. You know, starting on a hill, I don't know if you guys have ever done that. It's not the easiest thing to do. If you know how to do it, it's easy. But if you don't know how to do it, it's not easy. And, you know, you don't even know what a manual transmission is. You don't even know what a clutch is and a brake and gas pedal or whatever when you're first starting. But she actually progressed fairly quickly. And she now is an unconscious competent. She is an excellent driver, doesn't even realize that she's, you know, what she's doing. She just does it naturally. So we do this for every skill we've ever had. And I had it in skating, 25 years or whatever, 26 years. I really thought I knew how to skate. And this figure skater was going to come up and teach us how to skate. And I thought, well, that's pretty ridiculous. But she taught us more in a half an hour than I had learned in 26 years. And then I became an unconscious competent because 20 years later, I hadn't skated in 20 years, and I was still able to do that. So that's pretty cool. And so the lesson to that is, if we think we know it all, we basically get blindsided. We're open to getting blindsided. Now, I don't know if you know that term, blindsided, but if suddenly something appears and you had no idea it was coming and it hits you and it's not good. You know, you could get blindsided by winning the lottery, for example, or win a lot of money. Well, that's a good thing. But this term is normally used in you get blindsided by something happens and it's not good. Like the one I, relate to is my biggest investigation ever, which is in Buncefield in 2005. And they lost their entire facility. $2 billion US loss. Billion with a B. And the only good thing is they didn't kill anybody. But they thought their facility was the best one in the fleet. And what they didn't realize is that it was far from the best one in the fleet. They didn't know what they didn't know. And then when all the holes lined up in December of 2005, they lost their entire facility. And that cost them. They got blindsided. And so you can do it as an organization, you can do it as an individual. And this is what, this is a big learning right here. It's not one of the 20 puzzle pieces per se, but it's a huge thing. You have to keep open and never reach the point where you think you know it all. Take a look at Australia. Here's our COVID-19 deaths in Canada, 8,183. Our population in Canada is 1.5 times that of Australia. They're another Commonwealth country. We're a Commonwealth. We're part of the British Empire still. And so we're we're 1.5 times the population of Australia. But their COVID-19 deaths, and this was in June, 102 total. Ours were 8,183. Now, from an elderly care home perspective, their COVID-19 deaths, of the 102, theirs was 29. Ours was 6,546. And so deaths per million population, 178 in Canada, 1 in Australia. Now, how significant is that? How important is it to know that data, to have, we're in statistical analysis of data. How important would that be to have a good feel for that? I think it's hugely important. And by the way, note the logarithmic scale on this. I had to put it on a logarithmic scale to get it even on the same chart, on the same graph. So that is just incredible. We know Canada's recognized that our performance in elderly care homes has just been there's no good word to describe it. It's just atrocious. It's horrible. It's abysmal. It's really, really bad. Really, really poor. Some other countries are like that as well, but it's something we certainly could have avoided. We cannot say, well, that's just the way it is. Not allowed to say that, because look what Australia did. Australia was ready for this. This wasn't luck. Australia knew this was going to happen, and they were ready for it. They protected their elderly care homes, and so that's why they got this, and we got that. So all of these deaths are needless, and that's the really tragic part of this. Valid audits and assessments. Well, in our company 40 years ago, the effective managers, they requested audits and assessments. And they used the data from these audits and assessments to fix weaknesses before accidents occurred. These were the good leaders. But we had lots of managers that were not. And the weaker managers, they were fearful of these audits and assessments because they didn't know what they were going to find. If they were weak managers, they probably had poor facilities. And so the good auditors and good assessors would go in there and they'd find all kinds of stuff. And they didn't want them in there. They would not allow them in there. So of course, they had no good audit and assessment reports, no good data, they weren't making improvements, and they would end up having incidents. My past 27 years since I left, a lot of internal assessments, not third party. I know there's many people don't like these external assessments in third-party assessments, and there's tremendous pressure to be green on the dashboard, not yellow, not red, but green, and do whatever you can do to get green, essentially. And that's not good. A lot of management pressure to be green. What we did in our company is we trained Ontario Hydro managers. We reoriented them to recognize that an effective assessment provided them with powerful data that they could use to identify these system weaknesses and correct them before they experienced a major incident. And if managers didn't get it, any weak managers who still did not get this, they were replaced with managers who did. They got rid of them. Said, if you don't recognize that you need to do this, then you need to go. And they did. So that was a big step forward in doing that. Let me ask you, have you experienced any managers or superintendents, I call it exerting their influence to make sure that audits or assessments produce results that ended up green on the dashboard and make them and their organization look good? Don't just say yes or no in your chat box. You don't need to go either. Okay, so you've seen this. Okay, and that's not good. You're not going to make improvements that way if what you're doing is simply trying to be green. But I understand the culture. There's huge pressure for them to be that way. If you try to go a different way, then many times it's a difficult road to follow. Now, you remember I told you about Canada and Australia with the elder care homes. We're back to that now. Elderly care homes in Canada and Australia as of June 17th. COVID in Canada, total COVID in Canada, 8,183. Elderly care homes, 6,546 deaths. So I showed you this graph already. Now, look at this one. Elderly care home resident quality inspections. These are high quality, third party, unannounced. They come into these residents, elderly care homes, and they conduct a comprehensive inspection. Australia has 3,099 of these facilities, elderly care homes. Last year, 2019, they did 3,099 residence quality inspections, RQIs, one for every home. And they gave not recommendations, they gave actions that they had to meet. And the government is very strict. Canada, this is Ontario actually, not even the whole of Canada, but Ontario is one of our worst provinces, my province. 14 million people in Ontario, 628 homes. They did 9 residence quality inspections out of 628 homes, 9. Here they did 1 for every home. Now, can you see the difference? Can you see the connection between resident quality inspections and the actual, you go back to deaths, 6,546 versus 29. Huge. So that should tell you the power. That gives you some kind of glimpse of the power of having effective, independent, third-party, unannounced inspections, audits, assessments, whatever you want to call them. It's absolutely huge. COVID-19 showed this up. There's no hiding it. It showed it up. And many countries or companies and organizations, departments, are still getting away with this. They're doing this maybe, or they're having announced inspections. It's like when the executives come around, they're all announced, and you're not really doing anything there. I told you last week that my mission is to try to help people from a safety point of view, basically complete, I call it, my analogy is completing the marathon of life. And like, I've never run a marathon, never wanted to run a marathon, but I have respect for people who do it. 26 miles. So that my equivalent is 100 years of life. Like John Wooden, the one I told you about, the basketball coach, he lived to be 100. Queen Elizabeth is coming up on 100. And there's a lot of people, that more and more today that are living to be 100 and are actually mentally sharp and physically in reasonable shape. So that's kind of my objective. My brother didn't make it. My brother made it to mile 6 out of a 26-mile marathon. So we don't want that happening to anyone, individuals. And that was 50 years ago.
Hi again. I hope you enjoyed that little glimpse inside the secret code. Keep watching and you can find out what your options are going forward. Thank you for watching this, and I hope to connect with you down the road again sometime.